there is a specific kind of painful moment that most people have experienced at least once. You look back at a decision you made, a relationship you stayed in too long, a job you took when every sign told you not to, an investment you made despite knowing better, and you think to yourself, how did I not see that coming? And the answer that most people land on is that they were not thinking clearly enough, that if they had just been smarter, more rational, more careful, they would have made a better choice. But here is what the research actually shows. Intelligence does not protect you from bad decisions. In many cases, it makes things worse. And understanding why is one of the most useful things you will ever learn about how your own mind works. Let us start with something called the intelligence trap. In 2019, a researcher named David Robson published findings that challenged one of the most deeply held assumptions in modern life, the assumption that smarter people make better decisions. What he found was the opposite. High intelligence correlates with a range of specific thinking errors that less analytical people are actually less vulnerable to. One of the clearest examples is what psychologists call motivated reasoning. This is the tendency to use your intelligence not to find the truth, but to defend a conclusion you have already reached emotionally. And the smarter you are, the better you are at doing it. Think about what that means. A highly intelligent person who has already decided they want something, a relationship, a business idea, a belief about themselves or the world, is better equipped than almost anyone to construct a convincing argument for why that thing is a good idea. They can find the supporting evidence faster. They can dismiss the contradictory evidence more elegantly. They can build a case that sounds completely rational and is, underneath it all, completely driven by what they wanted to believe in the first place. This is not stupidity. It is intelligence being used in the wrong direction, and it happens to brilliant people constantly. Consider the number of highly educated, analytically gifted people who have lost everything on a business venture that everyone around them could see was failing, or stayed in a clearly destructive relationship while constructing increasingly sophisticated reasons why it was actually fine, or held on to a belief long after the evidence against it became overwhelming, simply because they were good enough thinkers to keep finding ways around it. Raw intelligence without self-awareness is not a protection against bad decisions. It is an accelerant. The second reason smart people make terrible decisions is something called the curse of knowledge. The more you know about a subject, the harder it becomes to imagine not knowing it. And that gap between what you know and what others know leads to consistent and predictable errors in judgment. A highly knowledgeable person tends to overestimate how much information other people are working with. They make decisions based on a level of understanding that the people around them do not share. They communicate in ways that assume context that does not exist. They underestimate how confusing their industry, their plan, or their thinking is to someone on the outside. This plays out in business constantly. Founders who deeply understand their product cannot understand why customers do not get it. Experts who have spent years in a field are genuinely baffled when a simple explanation lands better than a precise one. Smart people who have thought about a problem from every angle assume that everyone else has too. The curse of knowledge makes smart people worse at reading rooms, worse at persuasion, and worse at making decisions that involve other people, which is almost every important decision you will ever make. The third factor is overconfidence. There is a well-documented phenomenon in psychology called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which most people have heard of. People with limited knowledge in an area tend to overestimate their competence because they do not know enough to recognize how much they do not know. But there is a less discussed flip side. Highly competent people in one domain frequently overestimate their competence in adjacent domains. Someone who is genuinely brilliant at finance assumes they will also be good at running a team. Someone who is exceptional at strategy assumes they will also be good at execution. Someone who is highly intelligent in an academic sense assumes that intelligence will transfer cleanly to business, relationships, or any other area of life.
This audio was created with async.com.
Business, relationships, or any other area of life they turn their attention to. It often does not. And the confidence that comes from being genuinely good at something can be one of the most dangerous things a person carries into a situation where the rules are different. The fourth reason is analysis paralysis. Smart people tend to see more variables. They are better at identifying risks, complications, second-order consequences, and edge cases. In some situations, this is enormously valuable. In others, it becomes a trap. When you can see every possible way something could go wrong, making a decision becomes genuinely difficult. The more thoroughly you analyze a situation, the more uncertainty you uncover. And the more uncertainty you uncover, the harder it is to commit. Meanwhile, someone with less analytical ability looks at the same situation, sees fewer complications, makes a decision and moves. Speed of decision-making is often more valuable than quality of analysis. In fast-moving situations, in relationships, in business, in life, the person who decides and adjusts tends to outperform the person who analyzes and waits. Intelligence, taken too far, becomes an obstacle to action. The fifth, and perhaps most uncomfortable reason, is that smart people are better at lying to themselves. Self-deception is a universal human trait. We all do it. We all construct narratives about ourselves and our choices that are more flattering than the reality. But the sophistication of the self-deception scales with intelligence. A highly intelligent person who is in denial about something, an addiction, a failing relationship, a bad financial decision, a character flaw, can construct a defense of their behavior that is genuinely impressive. They can anticipate objections and address them. They can reframe the evidence. They can present themselves, to themselves, as the reasonable one, the misunderstood one, the one who is actually thinking more clearly than everyone around them. And because the internal argument is so well constructed, it is very hard to see through it from the inside. The very ability that makes them good at so many things is working against them in the moments they most need clarity. So what is the solution? If intelligence can work against you, what does that mean practically? The first thing is to build in external checks that you cannot argue your way around. Not people who will tell you what you want to hear, but people who have demonstrated a willingness to tell you when you are wrong. Smart people in particular tend to surround themselves with people who admire them, which removes the friction that might otherwise catch a bad decision before it becomes a disaster. The second thing is to actively seek out the case against your position before you commit to it, not to find reasons to abandon every decision, but to genuinely test whether your reasoning holds up when challenged. If the counterargument falls apart easily, your confidence is probably warranted. If you find yourself getting irritated by the counterargument, that irritation is worth paying attention to. The third thing is to pay attention to your emotional state when you are reasoning. Motivated reasoning always has an emotional engine. There is always something you want to be true underneath the logic. When you notice that your reasoning is leading you consistently toward a conclusion that also happens to be what you wanted, that is the moment to slow down and ask whether you are thinking or rationalizing. And the fourth thing is to value the perspective of people who are less analytical than you in certain situations. The person who cannot articulate why something feels wrong but feels strongly that it does is sometimes picking up on something real that your more sophisticated analysis has talked you out of seeing. Intelligence is not the only instrument worth consulting. The most dangerous thing about being smart is believing that being smart is enough. The brain is not a neutral reasoning machine. It is a deeply human organ shaped by emotion, ego, experience, and desire. And it will use every tool at its disposal, including your intelligence, to protect the conclusions it has already reached. Knowing that does not make you immune, but it does make you harder to fool, even by yourself. The next video looks at something that affects every single relationship you have ever had, why your brain remembers painful memories more vividly than happy ones, and what that does to the way you see the people in your life. Subscribe so you do not miss it.
This audio was created with Async.com.